Back away from my car, lady.
The first thing people heard that night wasn't the engine, it was the threat. 3 men in leather jackets cornered a woman under the humming lights of East Point Auto, a small garage tucked behind a faded gas station. One of them kicked over a bucket of oil, letting it spill across the concrete floor like a spreading shadow.
Last warning,
The taller one said.
you either start paying protection or this shop burns with you in it.
But the woman didn't move. Her name was Danielle Holt, 42, owner of the last black-owned repair garage in the East Point district. To the locals, she was just Miss D, the woman who fixed their brakes and offered cold soda while they waited. To the men circling her, she looked like an easy target, small, quiet, working late, alone. What they didn't know was that Danielle once built armored convoys for the U.S. Army, and that the hands wiping grease from a wrench had spent 10 years disarming bombs in Iraq. The only thing more dangerous than an angry soldier is a calm one. The gang's leader, Reed Connolly, a trust fund dropout playing gangster for his brother's crew, leaned in close, flicking his lighter. The flame reflected in Danielle's safety glasses.
You know what happens to people who don't cooperate?
He asked. Danielle met his stare. I fix things that break, she said quietly. You just volunteered. That's when the camera phones started rolling. And in 43 seconds, 3 men who thought they owned the block learned that a mechanic's tools aren't just for cars. By sunrise, the same street that had stayed silent for years would be alive with neighbors, police lights, and headlines. But before the cameras, before the fight, before the entire internet learned her name, she was just a woman trying to survive another night shift in a place that had already taken everything from her but her pride. This is the story of how a mechanic turned her garage into a battlefield, how one spark of courage set off a citywide reckoning. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever kept standing when the world told you to kneel, stay till the end of this story. Because when Danielle Holt picked up that wrench, the city changed. Before we open the first chapter, tell me where you're watching from. And think about this. What would you have done if you were standing in her shoes that night? The neon open sign still buzzed, even though the clock above the tool bench said 9:42 p.m. Danielle Holt moved through the empty garage with the steady rhythm of someone who had worked her whole life among machines. Her coveralls were streaked with oil, her hands wrapped in mechanic's gloves thin enough to feel the weight of every wrench. The radio whispered an old soul song beneath the drone of the fluorescent lights. Most nights ended the same way: mop the floor, wipe the counters, lock the bays, and hope the vandals skipped her shop this time. East Point used to be a place where families waved to each other across porches. Lately, it felt like a neighborhood under siege, businesses tagged, windows shattered, rumor after rumor about the Northline crew muscling in. Danielle had tried to ignore them. She'd fixed the glass, scrubbed the spray paint, and told herself it would pass. But fear moves faster than paint remover. Customers stopped coming after sunset. Even the parts suppliers began asking for cash up front. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her brother, Jalen, who taught welding at the community college. Lock up early, heard about another shakedown on 8th Street. She typed back one word, copy. Then she switched off the radio. The garage went still. That was when the first knock came, 3 slow thuds against the side door. Danielle froze, cloth still in her hand. The sound wasn't the casual rap of a customer. It was deliberate, heavy. She looked through the narrow glass panel and saw 3 shapes. Jackets, boots, cigarettes glowing like small red eyes. She thought they'd leave when she didn't answer. Instead, the lock rattled.
Open up, Miss D, a voice drawled. We just want to talk about your insurance plan.
Her stomach tightened. Reed Connolly. She'd heard the name whispered for months. Young, rich, reckless. The kind of man who thought intimidation was a hobby. She reached under the counter and thumbed the silent alert button she'd wired to her phone, an app that pinged Jalen and uploaded security cam footage to a remote drive. The red light above the cash register blinked once. The side door groaned open. Reed stepped in first. 2 others followed, filling the space with cigarette smoke and false confidence.
Place looks nice, Reed said, scanning the shop. You do this all alone?
Yep, Danielle said. Her voice didn't shake. It stays that way. The shortest of the 3 kicked a socket wrench across the floor, testing her reaction. She didn't flinch. Reed smiled.
See, that's the problem. Working alone out here ain't safe. We're offering neighborhood protection. Keeps folks from accidents. He tapped a shelf of motor oil cans. Fires start easy, you know. Old wiring, one spark.
Danielle kept wiping her hands with the same cloth, slow and even. Funny thing about sparks, she said. Sometimes they start the wrong fire. Reed's grin tightened.
Don't get clever, sweetheart. I'm giving you a chance to be smart.
Behind him, the taller man picked up her framed business license and dropped it face down. The glass cracked. That sound, the brittle snap, landed somewhere deep inside her. Years of keeping her head down, hoping trouble would skip her block, pressed against one quiet breath. She glanced at the clock. 9:58 p.m.
Last chance, Reed said. $500 a week starting tonight. Or
He gestured toward the gas heater in the corner.
the whole place goes up.
Danielle nodded once, as if considering it. She stepped behind the counter where her tool cart waited. "Give me a minute," she said. "I'll get my purse." The men exchanged smug looks. "See, she's learning." But the security cameras were already recording every word. The tiny indicator in the overhead light glowed red. In her pocket, her phone vibrated twice, confirmation that the feed had gone live. Danielle bent down, opening a lower drawer, pretending to search. She wasn't looking for cash. She was breathing, slow, controlled, the way she'd learned overseas when a wrong move could set off a mine. Behind her, one of the men laughed.
Make it quick, lady. We got other stops tonight.
She straightened. In her hand was a long wrench, balanced like a baton. Not raised. Not threatening. Just there. "Gentlemen," she said softly, "I need you to leave my shop." The smirk faded from Reed's face. "You serious? You've had your say. Now go." He took one step forward. "Or what?" The wrench clanged against the concrete, once hard, startling the others. In that metallic echo, something changed. Danielle's shoulders squared. The fear left her eyes. The next 43 seconds would live on a dozen cell phones by morning, replayed on every news channel by noon. What those shaky clips couldn't capture was the look on her face. The calm precision of someone who'd already done the math and found courage cheaper than compromise. When the police arrived 7 minutes later, 3 men were sprawled on the floor, groaning, nursing bruised pride more than broken bones. One phone lay smashed near the door. Danielle stood near the workbench, breathing hard, hair loosened from its tie, hands trembling from adrenaline rather than anger. She didn't say a word until the first officer asked, "Ma'am, are you hurt?" She looked at the mess, the overturned oil cans, the cracked license, the boot prints in her clean floor, and shook her head. Not anymore. Outside, neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering. Someone filmed from across the street. The clip would start with flashing lights and end with a caption that read, "She warned them." As paramedics led the men out, Reed's voice rasped through split lips. "You're finished, lady. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Danielle met his stare, calm and unblinking. "Neither do you." The camera caught that line. It would become a meme before sunrise. She closed the garage door after the cruisers left, locked it twice, and leaned against the counter. For the first time all night, her hands began to shake. She wasn't shaking from fear, she was shaking because she knew what came next. People like Reed never worked alone. Someone higher would see that video, and when they did, the real war for East Point would begin. She turned off the neon sign, whispering to herself, "They think I fixed a car tonight. I fixed a problem." The clock clicked past 10. The street outside was silent again, but she could feel the neighborhood watching. The video hit the city before sunrise. 43 seconds of flickering light, a clang of metal, 3 men on the floor, and a calm voice saying, "Leave my shop." By 8 a.m., it was on every phone in East Point. By 9, it was on every television. At 10 o'clock, the noise arrived. Camera crews parked in front of East Point Auto like vultures circling a fresh roadkill story. Reporters rehearsed lines in the reflection of Danielle's roll-up door. Strangers shouted questions through the chain-link fence. Words like vigilante, violence, self-defense. tangled in the winter air. Inside, Danielle stood behind her counter, motionless except for the slow rhythm of her thumb tracing a crack in the countertop. The same crack one of Reed Connolly's men had left when they dropped her business license. The sound of it breaking had replayed in her head all night like a heartbeat she couldn't turn off. Outside the glass, microphones waited for her to open the door. She didn't. Instead, she stared at the row of machines she'd spent years keeping alive, compressors that coughed, lifts that moaned, an air hose that whistled like a lonely kettle. Everything still worked, but the place felt broken. She could taste the headlines before they printed them. She fought back. Should she have? A police cruiser slowed at the curb, then rolled on. No one inside looked her way. Protection had become paperwork. By noon, her supplier truck drove past without stopping. The driver raised a hand in apology he didn't have words for. On the windshield, the company decal gleamed like an accusation. We support safe businesses. Danielle leaned on the counter and let the silence thicken. The shop smelled of oil and betrayal. The door opened without a knock. Carlos Morales stepped in, city-issued jacket dusted with snow, shoulders big enough to block the draft. "They turned your video into a debate," he said. "Half the city's calling you a hero. The other half wants you shut down." "I didn't ask to be either," Danielle replied. He glanced at the window. Someone had taped two signs side by side. "We stand with Miss D," and beneath it, scrawled in spray paint, "till it costs something." Carlos shook his head. "They're coming to film a live segment. You gonna talk?" "No," she said. "Talking's for people they plan to listen to." He sighed. "Then what's the move?" "Find out who filed the suspension," she said. "Someone pulled strings overnight. Permits don't vanish that fast." Carlos nodded slowly. "You think it's Reed's people?" "Reed doesn't know how to spell permit," she said. "Someone higher does." Before he could answer, a black SUV rolled to the curb. The door opened, and a reporter in a crimson coat stepped out with a cameraman already filming. Dana Kent, Channel 8. Her smile was the kind you practice in a mirror when you plan to break someone gently on live TV. She didn't wait to be invited. "Ms. Holt," she called, stepping through the half-open door. "Dana Kent, local news. I'd love your side of the story before we go live." Danielle kept her eyes on a torque wrench she was cleaning. "My side doesn't fit your time slot." Dana laughed softly, rehearsed sympathy. "We've spoken to witnesses who claim you threatened them before the fight. One of them, Mr. Connolly, says you poured oil on his face." Danielle looked up then slowly. "You should ask him where the lighter went." Dana blinked. "Excuse me?" "The lighter," Danielle said. "The one he flicked near the gas heater. Ask him who filmed that." Dana recovered the anchor smile. "We'll include your statement, but there are questions about whether you were authorized to record people in your shop." "The signs are posted." "Yes, but intent matters too." "Intent?" Danielle set the wrench down. "My intent was to stay alive." Dana's silence was long enough for the cameras to drink in her face, strong, unbent, untelevised. Then she turned to her cameraman. "Got it? Let's wrap." Carlos muttered as they left. "They'll cut that so you sound angry." "That's fine," Danielle said. "Anger's the one emotion they don't get to edit." He started to answer, but a man in a slate-gray suit appeared in the doorway, carrying a folder like a weapon of paper. "City risk and code compliance." "Ms. Holt," he said gently, "you're hereby notified of a temporary suspension of your occupancy permit, pending safety review." Danielle stared at him. "For what reason?" "Public disturbance. Possible hazardous environment." He lowered his eyes. "I'm just delivering. You can appeal within 72 hours. Behind him, the cameras whirred again. Channel 8 still filming from the sidewalk. The perfect cutaway shot. Danielle took the envelope, turned it over in her hands. "Who requested the review?" He hesitated. "It came through a private legal firm, Connolly and Haynes." She almost smiled. "Of course it did." When he left, the envelope felt heavier than metal. Carlos exhaled. "They're trying to bleed you dry before court even opens." "They won't have time," Danielle said. "We'll make them answer first." She walked to the back office and powered up the old desktop. The screen hummed to life, grainy security footage looping like proof of memory. Reed's voice echoed through cheap speakers, calm, unmistakable. $500 a week, starting tonight. She clipped the audio, time-stamped it, and dropped it into a folder labeled evidence. Then she opened another file. Invoices from nearby shops, each stamped inspection fee $480, inspection fee $525. Same handwriting. Same pencil scrawl. Pattern. Intent. Racketeering dressed as paperwork. She printed them, slid them into a binder, and stared at the top page until the ink smell turned her stomach. Then her computer chimed. A new email from Eva Sosa, Ombudsman for Small Business. Ms. Holt, I reviewed your submission. The suspension stands temporarily, but I'm authorizing a public mediation. Tomorrow, 5 p.m., East Point Community Center, Room B, neutral moderator. Live streamed for transparency. Bring your documentation and any witnesses willing to speak. Danielle reread the message twice. A mediation. A stage dressed as fairness. A trap if she walked in unarmed. A mirror if she brought the truth. She printed the email, folded it into her pocket, and turned to Carlos. They want me there at 5. You going? I'll be early. That night, East Point didn't sleep. Some neighbors taped support Miss D signs to their windows. Others pulled them down after phone calls from unknown numbers. Police cruisers rolled by slow, not stopping. Someone threw an egg at her gate. It froze there, half shattered, like a warning that couldn't decide if it was serious. In the quiet of her office, Danielle made her own list. Names, numbers, and questions sharp enough to cut through a live stream. Who filed the inspection paperwork? Who paid the inspection fee? Who approved private legal representation for a city review? Why does every fee equal a week of protection money? Why did risk and code skip notice to the property owner? Who benefits if East Point businesses close? She wrote each in block letters, then pinned the sheet above her desk. When fatigue threatened, she looked at it and felt the fear turn into precision. At 10 p.m., the doorbell chimed again. A man in a navy coat stepped inside, shoes dry despite the slush. Ms. Holt, he said, smiling as though he'd been invited. Gavin Haynes, Connolly and Haynes. My clients asked me to resolve this quietly. Your clients tried that last night, she said. With bats instead of folders. He chuckled. We prefer contracts. Sign a temporary closure agreement, accept minor penalties, and we all move on. Otherwise, we'll file for an injunction barring you from operating until the case settles. Danielle leaned on the counter. You'll need to show cause. Oh, we have cause, he said. Public safety. Civil liability. Reckless endangerment. You mean proof, she said. His smile thinned. You can be right, Ms. Holt, or you can keep your doors open. She looked at the envelope still on the counter, then back at him. You can tell your clients something from me, she said quietly. He waited. I don't close. I rebuild. The lawyer straightened, pocketed his card, and left. The door clicked behind him like punctuation on a threat. Danielle stared at her reflection in the glass, grease-smudged, tired, unbowed. Outside, the red LED of the camera blinked once, steady as a heartbeat. Across the street, someone switched on a porch light and didn't turn it off. She whispered to the empty shop, tomorrow, we stop pretending the fire started here. She shut off the lights. In the darkness, only the security indicator remained, tiny, red, unblinking, recording everything. At 4:57 p.m., the folding chairs of East Point Community Center, Room B creaked under the weight of a city's tension. Every seat was taken, mechanics, barbers, grocery owners, a nurse still in scrubs, mothers clutching their purses like armor. Some wore t-shirts that said stand with D, others kept their coats zipped high, afraid to choose a side too early. On the far end of the room, the press table glowed under a halo of ring lights. Reporters whispered rehearsed introductions, microphones waiting like open mouths. Every lens pointed toward the lone empty chair behind the folding table at the front. That was hers. Danielle Holt stepped through the side door precisely at 5. She wore her navy coveralls, cleaned but still scarred with oil stains that refused to fade. No blazer. No makeup. Just the face of a woman who worked with her hands and had run out of reasons to pretend otherwise. As she walked down the aisle, the murmurs dimmed into silence. Some nodded. Some looked away. The air was heavy with judgment, half respect, half curiosity. At the center of the front table sat Eva Sosa, the ombudsman, thin, deliberate, hair in a braid sharp enough to slice paper. To her left, a corporate lawyer in a tailored suit, Gavin Haynes, smiling like this was a friendly negotiation. To Eva's right, Detective Reeves from City Police, hands folded, face unreadable. Behind them, a banner read Community Mediation, East Point Incident Review. Eva tapped her microphone. Good evening. This hearing is being recorded and live-streamed for transparency. Each party will have an opportunity to speak. Our purpose is not punishment but resolution. She turned toward Danielle. Ms. Holt, thank you for appearing voluntarily. Danielle nodded once. Wasn't given much choice. Laughter rippled from the crowd. Eva let it fade. You've submitted documentation alleging harassment, extortion, and collusion between private contractors and members of this community. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And you've also been accused of excessive force and endangerment. Danielle met Gavin Haynes's eyes. I've read the accusations. They're creative. The lawyer leaned forward. Let's begin there, shall we? My clients, Mr. Reed Connolly and several others, were unarmed. They came to discuss a property issue. Ms. Holt responded with violence. Coffee pots. Wrenches. A deliberate escalation. Danielle didn't move. They brought baseball bats. They threatened to burn my shop down. Gavin spread his hands. Allegedly. Documented, she said, sliding a thumb drive across the table. Audio and timestamps. Eva gestured to the technician. Play Exhibit A. The room filled with Reed's voice, tinny but unmistakable. 500 a week, starting tonight. Otherwise, accidents happen. The crowd gasped. A few people shouted, play it again. Cameras zoomed in on Gavin's face as his smile stiffened. Eva raised a hand. Order, please. Mr. Haynes. He adjusted his tie. We can't verify the authenticity. Danielle cut in. You will. The same handwriting appears on half a dozen inspection invoices across the district. All for $500. All signed off by the same compliance officer your firm represents. Gasps again. A man in the third row stood up. Mr. Ng, the hardware store owner. She's right. They fined me twice for the same inspection. I paid or they said they'd close me down. Eva's pen scratched notes furiously. Mr. Ng, you're confirming this? Yes, ma'am. Same amount, same handwriting. Gavin tried to recover. These are isolated incidents. Routine fees misfiled. Danielle opened the binder she'd carried in. The pages were crisp, labeled, color-coded. This isn't misfiled paperwork. It's a pattern. Same pencil marks. Same collector. Same law firms signing the review requests. Eva stared at the evidence, then at Gavin. Mr. Haynes, are you representing multiple clients who also file code suspensions? I represent the city's legal interests, he said evenly. Danielle's voice hardened. No, you represent a racket. The words landed like a hammer. Cameras flashed. Someone in the back clapped once before the room fell silent again. Eva leaned back. Ms. Holt, please confine your comments. But Danielle was already walking to the projector. If this is about safety, let's talk about safety. She clicked the remote. The screen lit up with photographs, graffiti, shattered windows, rat-infested trash dumped behind small businesses. This is what happens when we say no to their fees, she said. Another photo. This is what happens when we report it. A burned dumpster. A scorched awning. A threatening letter signed only with a skull. Every image had a timestamp. Every timestamp matched a complaint ignored by the same department now suspending her permit. The audience shifted from curiosity to anger. Murmurs turned into words. That's my store. That's my alley. That's my window. Danielle stepped away from the screen. They said I was dangerous. Maybe I am, to people who profit from fear. Eva's gavel hit wood. Order. But the noise had its own rhythm now. People were standing, pointing, filming. A woman shouted, "We paid them too." Another, "They told me to shut up." Gavin tried to shout over them, "This meeting is out of control." Eva's voice strained for calm. "Ms. Holt, you've made serious allegations. These will require verification." Danielle nodded. "You'll have it. And more." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded letter. "I received this last night. It's a threat from Mr. Connolly himself. Sent from a burner number. Forwarded to police, no response." Detective Reeves shifted uncomfortably. "We're reviewing that evidence." "When?" Danielle asked. "Before or after they torch another shop?" The detective looked away. Cameras caught it. The room murmured again. Then from the back row, a voice cut through the noise. "Familiar. That's enough." Heads turned. Reed Connolly himself stood in the doorway, bandage on his jaw, smirk sharp as broken glass. Two men flanked him like shadows. "Sorry I'm late," he drawled. "Heard I was being discussed." Eva stiffened. "Mr. Connolly, this is a public hearing." "I know," he said, strolling forward. "Public means I get to talk too, right?" Security moved, but Reed raised both hands. "No trouble. Just truth." Danielle's jaw clenched. "The truth would melt your tongue." He smiled. "You think these people care about your recordings? About your crusade? They just wanted quiet. You gave them headlines." "Quiet," she said, stepping toward him, "is how you built your kingdom." Reed's gaze flicked toward the cameras. Tell them how you poured hot oil on me. Tell them how you planned this stunt to get famous. The footage cuts just before that, doesn't it?" Danielle didn't blink. "You know why? Because you kicked the tripod." The room gasped again. Reed's smirk faltered for the first time. Eva banged her gavel. "Mr. Connolly, sit down or you'll be removed." But he didn't. He leaned closer to the microphones. "She's lying. I've got witnesses." "Then let's hear them," Danielle said. "But make sure they swear under oath. Because I've got 6 more recordings and a live call with the Ombudsman's office approving this mediation." Eva's phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen, eyes widening. "Ms. Holt," she said slowly, "this message, it says the Department of Justice is requesting the full stream. They've opened an inquiry into municipal corruption." The room erupted. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment. Gavin Haynes went pale. Reed cursed under his breath. Eva hammered the gavel, shouting for order that no one could restore. Danielle stood perfectly still in the storm she had summoned. "You wanted it public," she said quietly. "Now it is." Reed's men began edging toward the side door. Cameras caught every motion. "Sit down," Eva ordered, but they didn't. One of them lifted his jacket just enough for Danielle to see the glint of metal. Her instinct screamed. 15 years of survival kicked in all at once. She moved, not running, not panicking, but fast, precise. She grabbed the nearest woman by the shoulder, pulled her down behind a table. "Get low!" A deafening crack echoed through the hall. Screams followed, chairs clattering. Chaos. Reporters dove for cover. Eva dropped behind the podium. Security swarmed. Danielle scanned the doorway. The shooter had already fled, the door swinging like a heartbeat gone wrong. Smoke curled from a hole in the drywall. Someone was crying. Someone else shouted for medics, though no one seemed hit. Danielle's hands trembled, but her voice was steel. "They just proved me right." Cameras were still rolling. She stood, lifted her chin, and faced the nearest lens. "You wanted proof East Point's being controlled by criminals? You just heard the gun they use when words fail." The crowd surged into movement, some filming, some helping, some shouting names. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Danielle looked at Eva. "And the meeting?" Eva nodded numbly. "Meeting adjourned." But Danielle knew this wasn't over. This was just the sound of the mask tearing off. That night, the footage hit every platform before the blood smell had left the air. Headline after headline. Live mediation erupts in gunfire. City under investigation. Mechanic turns whistleblower. DOJ steps in. In living rooms across the state, people replayed the moment Danielle ducked and pulled a stranger to safety. They slowed the clip, zoomed on the muzzle flash, argued in comment sections about whether it was staged. In a penthouse 3 miles away, Vincent Hayes, Reed's silent partner, watched the footage on loop. A glass of whiskey in his hand, his reflection stretched across the window. When the bullet hit the wall, he smiled faintly. "She's better than I thought," he murmured. Then, to the man standing behind him, "Make sure she doesn't reach tomorrow." The man nodded and disappeared, oppressed in the past. The morning after the shooting, East Point felt different. The air carried the metallic taste of fear and electricity, like the city itself had held its breath overnight. The bullet hole in the community center wall was already patched, but no one could unsee it. The video had reached millions. News cycles, podcasts, think pieces. Mechanic or martyr, whistleblower or threat. And through it all, one name kept surfacing: Danielle Holt. Her phone didn't stop ringing. Federal agents, journalists, neighbors who had once crossed the street to avoid eye contact. Even the mayor's office left a message that began with, "For the record, the city of Portland does not condone," and ended with, "Please reach out for an official statement opportunity." But Danielle didn't answer any of them. She sat alone in her shop that morning, hands blackened with grease, eyes fixed on the dent in the front counter, the one made by Reed's boot. The police had been through, the FBI had come and gone, but that dent, that was still hers. A reminder that even small wounds could outlast storms. Outside, the community had changed too. Children chalked messages on the pavement. "Thank you, Miss D." Shopkeepers unlocked their doors again. And for the first time in months, East Point Auto wasn't the only open sign glowing before dawn. She wasn't a pariah anymore. She was proof. But the war wasn't over. At exactly 9:03 a.m., the door opened. 2 federal agents stepped inside. Eva Sosa followed them, no longer in her city blazer but in the dark, sharp suit of someone carrying real authority. "Ms. Holt," Eva said, her tone softer than Danielle had ever heard. "We have news." Danielle set her wrench down. "Tell me." "The DOJ issued warrants this morning," Eva said. 4 Reed Connolly, Vincent Hayes, and multiple city officials linked to the inspection racket. Financial records, property seizures, shell companies, it's all unraveling. "And the shooter?" "Gone," one agent replied. "But we're closing in." Danielle nodded slowly. "Good." Eva hesitated. "There's more. The department is organizing a public press conference this evening. They're inviting you to speak." "I'm not a politician," Danielle said flatly. "No," Eva said, smiling faintly. "You're the reason this city found its spine again." Danielle didn't respond. She just looked out at the rising sun washing over her cracked lot. "Then let's finish it." That evening, the crowd outside City Hall was unlike anything Portland had seen in years. Thousands filled the street. Business owners, workers, church groups, students. Signs waved like tides. "We don't pay fear. Honest work is not a crime." East Point stands. Camera cranes rose above the crowd. The mayor spoke first, fumbling through a scripted apology about procedural failure and individual misconduct. The public wasn't listening. They were waiting. Then Eva took the stage. "For too long," she said, "East Point's working people were treated like trespassers in their own neighborhood. Tonight, thence, the Department of Justice has indicted 15 individuals for racketeering, bribery, and conspiracy to obstruct local governance. The people of this district owe their freedom to one woman's courage." She stepped aside. The crowd erupted as Danielle Holt walked to the microphone. She wore her shop uniform, patch and all. No security, no suit. Just the woman the city had once tried to silence. "Good evening," she began. Her voice didn't need a speaker. It carried on its own. "Some of you know me as the woman from the video. Some of you called me a criminal. Some of you called me a hero. But I'm neither." She paused, scanning faces. Some crying, some defiant, all listening. "I'm just tired. Tired of watching decent people get punished for surviving. Tired of systems that call corruption policy. And tired of men like Reed Connolly thinking power means fear. The crowd murmured, energy rising. Danielle gestured toward the line of police vans parked near the steps. They're bringing him out now. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Reed Connolly appeared, cuffed, bruised, and surrounded by marshals. Gone was the arrogance, the smirk, the swagger. His eyes darted, searching for somewhere to hide in daylight. Danielle stepped aside as agents led him up to the platform. Eva whispered something to him, then handed him a small microphone. "Say it," Danielle said quietly. Reed's throat bobbed. "To the people of East Point," he began, voice raw. I was wrong." The crowd was dead silent. "I thought respect came from fear," he continued. "That control made me safe. But fear only made me smaller. I hurt people who were trying to live honest lives. I took money that wasn't mine. I tried to break the one person who finally stood up to me." His voice cracked. "And she didn't break." The crowd roared. Some booed him, but Danielle lifted a hand, and the noise dimmed again. "Keep going," she said. Reed nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry. To every shop owner I threatened. Every family I scared. Every hand I forced to sign my name. I can't undo it, but I can face it." Eva stepped up. "Under DOJ order, restitution funds from seized assets will go toward rebuilding East Point businesses and community programs, including a new workshop, the Holt Foundation, for training young mechanics, run by Ms. Holt herself." The applause this time was thunderous. Danielle blinked hard, her voice catching as she stepped back to the microphone. "Reed Connolly once told me I'd lose everything if I stood up," she said. "Turns out, standing up was the only thing I hadn't lost yet." A woman in the crowd shouted, "Tell it, Miss D." The chant grew, "Stand up strong. Stand up strong." Danielle smiled, small, tired but real. "If I've learned anything," she said, "it's that fear only works when we face it alone. The moment we stand together, corruption doesn't look like power anymore. It looks like what it always was, weakness with a loud mouth." She looked toward the cameras. "So if you're watching this from another city, another street where they say your silence is safer than truth, don't believe them. Tell your story. Shine your light. Don't let them buy your quiet." She turned to Reed, now trembling, eyes red. "And to you," she said softly, "I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. You'll remember every name you hurt because you'll spend the rest of your sentence rebuilding what you tore down." He nodded, silent. Danielle stepped forward and extended her hand, not in friendship, but in closure. He took it, head bowed. The flash of cameras caught the moment, a symbol the city didn't know it needed, strength without vengeance. As marshals led him away, the crowd surged again, cheering, crying, hugging strangers. Eva leaned close to Danielle. "You could have walked away," she said. "Most people would." Danielle looked at the skyline, the flicker of lights, the hum of engines, the city exhaling after years of holding its breath. "I didn't fix cars all my life just to leave the engine half-assembled." Eva smiled. "What's next for you?" Danielle tilted her head toward the crowd where her neighbors, Carlos, Jalen, Mr. Ng, the nurse from the back row, were already clearing space for a new banner. It read, "East Point Rebuilds. Together." "I think," Danielle said, "it's time to teach people how to keep their hands clean and their hearts unafraid." The lights from the cameras glowed gold on her face. The chant started again, low, steady, defiant. "Stand up strong. Stand up strong." She raised her fist once, not in anger but in unity. And for the first time in years, East Point didn't feel scared of tomorrow. That night, the city's newsrooms called it a reckoning. The DOJ called it justice. But for Danielle Holt, it was something simpler, peace with noise. She returned to her shop after midnight, flipped the sign to open, and poured 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for whoever needed it next. The shop light flickered, but didn't go out. She smiled faintly. Not tonight. Then she looked into the camera one last time, the same one that had caught her at her lowest, and said, "If you believe in stories like this, real stories about courage, justice, and people who refuse to stay silent, subscribe. Like this video. Comment where you're watching from. Because when we share stories like these, she paused, the smallest smile breaking through. The next person standing alone might realize they aren't.